We begin today the Gemara on Daf Chav Zayin Amud Beis, where it says Masiv Rava. It's right in the middle of the Amud. The first word on the line is Dami. So this is another question that Rava asks on Rav Nachman's halacha. What are we talking about here? This is a sugya that discusses a halacha l'Moshe Sinai that says that funds that were dedicated for various karbanas together, and they're called Moi Stumin. It was unspecified in these funds what's for chatos, what's for oila, what's for shlamim. What happens if it comes a situation where those karbanas are not being brought for what they were intended to be brought? The person died or something else happened. So then the Mishnah says, and the Halacha l'Moshe Sinai teaches us, that all these monies become a donation on a dove for a oila. Okay, but now the Gemara said that this is only regarding monies, not regarding any other items, not regarding animals, not regarding anything else. Came Rav Nachman and said, just like this is true about money, the same is also true if you were makdish animals that have a blemish, because they are immediately available to be redeemed and use the money for karbanis. So therefore it's equivalent to money. So therefore the halacha that applies to money, which are stumin, moi stumin, applies also to behemis, which are bali momen. So on this, Rav asked a question from a braisa. It's a very lengthy braisa. It goes down till most of the next amud. And there's really only one point of this braisa that the Gemara has a question from on Rav Nachman, but the Gemara brings an entire braisa here. So Masiv Rav asked the question. So it says in the Torah, Karbon Noi, that if you're obligated in bringing a carbon for a carbon chatos, so the Torah says, Vehevi, the pasuk here says, Hayid elav chatosai shachataba, Vehevi es karbonoi, bring your carbon. The word Karbon Noi, your carbon, is an extra word. What does it say here? We learn from this, Bekarbonoi hu yaitze. You're only yaitze if this is your carbon that you dedicated for your aveda that you did. But ve'eni yaitze b'karbon aviv. You can't be yaitze with a carbon that your father dedicated to bring for his aveda, and the father passed away, and now you want to use that carbon for yourself. You can't take from your father's carbon. Now yachayil, I would think, lo yaitze b'karbon shalaviv shehifrish. You can't separate. You can't use that is. You can't use the carbon of your father shehifrish min akala ala chamura. Your father brought that carbon, or he dedicated that carbon for a lighter Aveda, and you want to use it now for a different Aveda, for a more stringent Aveda. When it comes to a carbon chatos, sometimes there's an Aveda that b'mezid you'd be chayiv kodis on it, or b'mezid you'd be chayiv misa on it. There's different, so there's kala, there's chamura. So your father dedicated this carbon for a lighter Aveda, and you want to use it for a more stringent Aveda, more severe Aveda. Oymena chamura ala kala, or the father dedicated this carbon for a more severe Aveda, you want to use it for a lighter Aveda. Now, the point is that the level of Aveda your father dedicated the carbon for is not the same as yours. Then you can't use it from your father. Avol, you would think that Yaitze b'karbon shefrish aviv, you could be Yaitze with the carbon of your father that he separated, minakala ala kala, or minachamura ala chamura. The same kind of Aveda their father, the same level of an Aveda, light for light, and more severe for more severe. So maybe in that case, the son could go and take the carbon of his father. Talmud Loimar, so the pasuk says yet again, there's another place where the pasuk says karbonoi. It says twice, this term karbonoi, that when you chayav a carbon chatos has to be your carbon, which means bekarbonoi hu yaitze. If it's yours, you're yaitze. But v'eni yaitze bekarbonoi shalaviv. Under no circumstance are you yaitze with the carbon of your father, even if your father dedicated the carbon for the exact same type of carbon as you. Now the Braisa continues further. Yochel, I would think to say, lo yaitze b'karbon aviv. You're not going to be yaitze with your father's carbon. B'behemesh shehifrish, with an animal that he separated as a carbon. Afil minakala ala kala, minachamura ala chamura. Whether it's kala ala kala. In other words, you're using the carbon for the same type of aveda that he separated it for, but you still can't use it, as we just learned that. And maybe I would say that this only applies to not using your father's behemoth. And now the point that the Braisa is going to try to make a distinction here with is that maybe when your father was mafresh money, funds for a carbon, and he didn't end up using the money, when he dies, you could go and use that money. Why should we make a distinction between the father that was makdish an actual behemoth and you now want to go ahead and use his carbon, or if the father was makdish money for a carbon, and now maybe we would say that here you could use that money. So the Braisa explains the reason why I would think that there's a difference. Shaharei, because when it comes to the actual behemoth, the halacha is ein adam megaleach al behemoth aviv b'naziris. a son cannot use, megaleach here means karbonis. You cannot use the animals that your father separated for his nazirus. We learned before, there's a halacha l'Moshe Sinai. We're going to talk about this also later in the Masechta. There's a halacha l'Moshe Sinai that a son could use the funds that a father separated for his karbonis, for his nazirus, and then the father died. The son could use those funds in certain circumstances. The funds could be used by the son, but not actual behemoths. The behemoths itself, if the father was makdish, the son cannot take them and use them. So therefore, just like by Nazirus, I see that the son can't use the father's animals that he already dedicated. So regarding all karbanos, any behemoths the father dedicated for karban chatos, the son can't use. Avol, however, I would still think that yoytze b'mois shehifrish aviv, if the father's already donated or designated the funds for a carbon, so that I would think that maybe then, if the father died, the monies that you could use for a carbon for yourself. And that's a filim and a chamura, lakala, even if the funds your father separated was not the same kind of carbon as yours. For his was for a more severe avera, yours is for a lighter one, oymen akala la chamura, or the father was going to use it for a lighter avera, you want to use it for a more severe avera. And I would say that here you could use it. Why? Because by Nazirus I find Sharei Adam Megaleach Al Mois Aviv Ben Nazirus. There's a halacha l'Moshe Misina that funds that your father dedicated for his Nazirus, if he passes away, the son could use them. And when is that? So here in this Braisa it spells out not always. Bizman shehein stumin. If the father dedicated these funds for the karbanis he had to bring as a Nazir, and those funds were not specified. Stumin, he just said, this funds here is going to be for my karbanis as a Nazir. But once the father already specified this money is for the chatos, this is for the yayla, this is for the shlamim, then the son cannot use it. Just like a son cannot use the actual behemoths that a father dedicated if he's a nazir. So the money as well, only if the money is stumin could the son use it, but not if it's mufurashin. But the point that the Bryce is trying to say from here is that since we see that there's such a concept by Nazirus that you could use the funds that your father dedicated for the carbon for your Nazirus, maybe I should say regarding all karbanis that funds that the father dedicated for a carbon chatos, and if he dies, so you, the son, could not go ahead and use it. Even though it's not exactly the same thing. It's interesting because when it comes to Nazirus, over there it has to be stumin, not mufurashin, as the Braisa here clearly says. And we're trying to use this as a source to say that regarding every carbon chatos, if a father dedicated funds for a carbon chatos, that the son could use that funds now for his carbon chatos. Now over here, it's mufurashin. What the father dedicated was clear for a chatos, and you want to use it now for a chatos. So, but nevertheless, the point the Braisa is saying is, we see by a nazir, there is a distinction between animals that the father dedicated and money that the father dedicated. By animals, there's never a scenario where the son can use it for himself after the father died. By money, there is a scenario, there is a possibility that the funds that the father dedicated, the son could not come and use. So maybe I should say by all karbanis, there's a difference between using your father's karbanis, your father's behemoths, or using the funds of your father. So Talmud Laimar, so the Braisa continues, it says, the Pasuk tells us a third time, karbon noi. There's another expression the Torah uses with the word karbon noi, which means the karbon noi hu yaitze, you're only yaitze with your carbon, then yaitze b'karbon aviv. You're not yaitze with your father's carbon. The Braisa continues further and says, na yachal, I would still think as follows, that lo yaitze b'mois shehifrish, that you can't be yaitze with the money that your father dedicated. So here the Bach adds shehifrish aviv, that the father dedicated, afilim min akala ala kala, even if you want to use the money that he already dedicated from the same level of an aveda. There's a kala ala kala, a light aveda for yourself, also the same kind of light aveda, min achamura ala chamura, from a severe aveda to a severe aveda. Aval, maybe I would think that yaitze bekarbin shehifrish la'atzmai min akala ala chamura min achamura ala kala. But how about the person himself? Forget about your father. If you yourself will mafresh a carbon for one kind of aveda, and now you want to use it for a different aveda, the person did it's two different. I mean, the Braisa soon brings an example. Let's say a person ate chaylev, forbidden fats. You have to bring a carbon chatas. Let's say a person ate blood, another aveda. So you have to bring out a carbon for that. So you will mafresh a carbon for one aveda, and now you want to use it for a different aveda. The truth is, the example I just said are two Averis that are similar, but here the Bryce is even speaking about two Averis b'shegig that are not similar, Kala and Chamura. But the point is, you're not using it from your father, from yourself. So maybe I would think that then you could take an animal dedicated for one Avera and decide to use it now for a different Avera. Talmud Laima, the pasuk says yet again, Karbonoi al Chatosoi. So here the Torah specifies al Chatosoi. What does that mean? Ad sheyehe Karbonoi l'shum Chatosoi. You have to bring the carbon that was dedicated for that specific Aveda. It can't be a carbon that was dedicated for a different Aveda. Okay, the last point here, the Braisa comes and explains, Yachol, I would still think. Now, so in this part of the Braisa, it's not talking about the father's karbonis that the son wants to use. It's talking about a son that wants to use karbonis that he dedicated for another Aveda. So what did we just say? We just brought the source in the pasuk regarding actual behema, the behema that you will makdish for one aveda. Now you want to use it for a different aveda. How about money? Money that you will makdish to be used for a carbon for one aveda. Now you want to switch and use that money for a different aveda. Maybe money is different than an actual animal that you already makdish for that particular aveda. So the Braisa explains, Yachol, I would think there's a distinction here. Lo yetze b'behema shifrish la'atzmai. You're not going to be yetze with a behema that you separated for yourself. Min akala ala kala. You want to now switch it from one aveda to another, even if it's the same type. It's from a light to a light aveda. Or min achamura ala chamura, from a severe aveda to a severe aveda. Or afilo, or some take out the word afilo here. But the word afilo really doesn't belong here. Minakala ala chamura or minachamura ala kala. You want to switch from a light to a severe or a severe to a light aveda. So the point is, you have an actual behemoth that you were already makdish for a particular aveda. Now you want to switch it to another one. So in such a case, I would think that it's understood why the Torah is saying that you can't switch it. The pasuk we just brought, al chatasai, that you have to bring only what's dedicated for this aveda. Why? What's the logic? Why would I say that it's dafke here? Shekain, the reason is, im hifrish behema lachelev. Once you designated this animal for the carbon for forbidden fats that you ate, and you have to bring a carbon for this, now vehevi aladam, and you went and you used that behema instead of for the carbon that you had to bring for the chelev, you brought it instead for blood that the person ate. For eating blood, you also have to bring a carbon chatas. Oyaladam, vehevi alachelev, or the reverse, it was dedicated for eating blood, and instead you brought it for eating chelev. So over here, in this case, we could understand why your carbon is not going to be accepted. And the reason is, shaharei loy mo'al. When you switch the carbon from one aveda to another, there's no me'ila. Meaning, me'ila is when you misuse hektish. What happens when you misuse hektish? So besides the aveda of misusing hektish, that item that you just took from hektish and misused goes out to chulin. It becomes, it's not hektish anymore. Okay, so over here though, when he switched the carbon from chaylev for using it to be brought for chaylev, and now he's bringing it for a different aveda that he did for eating dam, this animal that he brought for a different carbon for a different aveda never went out to become chulin. There's no me'ila that applies. Me'ila only applies if I take an item of hektish and I take it out from hektish. I use it for mundane use, for chulin. The me'ila itself is an aveda, but the me'ila also takes it out from the status of hektish. Over here, though, switching from one carbon of hektish to another carbon of hektish, there's no me'ila, because it never took it out to become chulin. So therefore, because you see you're not moyel, and it doesn't leave its status that it was, so therefore it's understood why this carbon won't work now for this different aveda that you brought it for, and therefore v'loi kiper. So if you want to now bring it for a different aveda, the kapara will not take effect, because you see it doesn't change. It remains what it was originally dedicated for. It was originally dedicated for the aveda of chaylev. So if you wanted to use it now for dam, you can't change it. It's too late. It remains what it is.
How does the Gemara makes, because it's no me'ila, therefore it doesn't go out. No me'ila means you're not moil on it, but it says
because these two things go together. There's another. These are the halachas of Hilchas Me'ila. There's another Beraisa over there that discusses it in Masechta Me'ila, or where this is the halacha regarding Me'ila. Me'ila is that once you moil, it goes out from the status of hektish. Over here, because you're not moil, it does not go out from its original status that it is. So that itself is the logic why you can't switch it to be used for a different aveda. It remains as is. Now, does this apply to money? money that you dedicated to be used for a carbon chatas for one aveda. Now you want to switch that money to be used for a different aveda. Maybe over here it's different. Aval, but you would say yaitze b'mois, that maybe you could be yaitze when it comes to money. Shehifrish la'atzmai, that you separated for yourself, and now you want to switch it min akala lakala. You separated for one light aveda. You're going to use it now for a different one. Or min achamura la'achamura, you want to use it from a severe aveda to another different severe aveda. Or min achamura lakala, min akala la'chamura, to switch from one aveda to another, from a severe to light, or from light to severe. The point is, you're switching it to a different aveda. Maybe if it's just money that you dedicated for this carbon, maybe that could be switched. Why would I say it should be able to be switched? Shekain im hifrish la'atzmai mois menachela. Because if a person dedicated money for himself to be used for a carbon that has to be brought for fats that he ate, for forbidden fats. Now vehevi aladam. What did this person do then? He took this money and he went and he bought with it an animal to be used for a different aveda that he did, for blood that he has to bring a carbon for that. Or aladam, the money was originally designated to be brought as a carbon for dam that he drank. And instead he went and used that money to go ahead and buy an animal for forbidden fats that he ate. What happens in such a case? Over here the halacha is shaharei mo'al. When he actually went and bought with this money of hektish a different carbon that he wasn't supposed to buy for it, over here there is me'ila. This money is being misused. The money was dedicated for one aveda. It belongs for that carbon chatos, and now you went and gave it to somebody to buy an animal from him for a different aveda. That money just went out to chulin. You're misusing it. Over here there is meila. So in such a case, what happens? There is meila, and now that money goes out to chulin, and with that money of chulin that you give this person, you're buying a new animal, and this new animal will be designated because of this money, through this money that is, for a new carbon, for a different carbon than it was originally, what the money was originally designated for. And therefore, v'kiper, if you actually go ahead, b'di'evet, once you did this, once you use the money to buy a different carbon, not what it was originally meant for, the kapara will take effect b'di'evet. So if the kapara takes effect b'di'evet, so I would think that maybe you could go ahead and do this. I see that the money could be changed. There's a me'ila here, it goes out to chulin if you misuse it, and then so the money could get exchanged. So maybe that means that l'chatchila, money, if it's not yet an actual animal, money that was designated for one type of aveda, if you want, you could just go ahead and switch it. Talmud Loimar, the pasuk says, al chat tosai, that you have to use the money for the aveda that it was designated for. I'm not sure if this is the same, this is a different pasuk. It's not the same al chatosei that the Gemara quoted before. This is yet another pasuk where it says al chatosei, which means achi yehe karbonoi l'shem chetoi, that you should use the money, l'chatchila, the person should use the money for the carbon that it was designated originally to be brought for. Okay, this is the conclusion of the Braisa. Okay, there's a lot of details in this Braisa, but the Gemara is focusing on just on one particular detail, which is the first line of this Amud. What did it say in the first line of this Amud? Bizman shein stumim v'lo bizman shein mufurashin. The Braisa spoke about a son using the father's money that he dedicated for his karbanis of his naziris. What did the Braisa say? When could a son use the money that the father dedicated for the karbanis of his naziris? Only if the money was unspecified. But once it's mefurashin, once it's specified, the son cannot use it. And then the Braisa said, if the father actually designated animals, not just money, for his naziros, then the son cannot use it. So the Gemara says, Katani miyis, what we learned here in this Braisa, beheme, that if the father designated animals, that the son cannot go ahead and use it for his naziros. My love, don't you think, what is this Braisa saying? Afilu balasmum, even if those animals were not whole, were not tmimim, but even if it has the blemish, even then you can't use what the father designated for the son. So the Gemara here is making a comparison. Just like over here, regarding this halacha l'Moshe Misinai, of what a son could use from the father, so we say that a son cannot use the animals that the father dedicated. Whether the animals the father dedicated were tmimim or balimumin, it doesn't make any difference. You could only use the money from the father, and only the money that were stumin from the father. So too, regarding the halacha l'Moshe Misinai that we're talking about before in the Gemara, which is when you have the moi stumin, that what happens to those moi stumin if it was not brought as a carbon? It all becomes an adava. But if it's behemoths, it does not become an adava. So we should say that the same halacha, like over here regarding the son using from the father, that the actual behemoth, there's no difference if it's tmimim or balimumin, by the halacha l'Moshe Sinai, that we say that behemoths are not like money, it should be the same thing. There's no difference even if it's a balmum, it's not like money. So therefore this is a question of Rav Nachman that said that if it's a balmum, then it's the same, it's equivalent to money. So the Gemara says, loy, there's no raya from this braisa. Tmima, when it says that the son cannot use the karbanis of his father, that's only if the father dedicated animals for his naziris, which were tmima, which were good, ready to be used for a carbon. Not if they were bali mumin. Aval balas mumai. So the Gemara asks on this, and this is a similar question that the Gemara said before already in the Chav Zayin. So what are you going to say if the father dedicated an animal that was a balmum? So mai kistuma damya. So that's like monies, which are unspecified monies, and the son could use the father's behemoths for his carbon. If so, my iriya diktani mois shehifresh aviv. Why does the Braisa here say that a son could only use money that the father dedicated? Lisni balas mum. Why doesn't the Braisa say a bigger chiddush? Why doesn't the Braisa say that even the animals that are balmum, the son could also use? Answers the Gemara, hachanami. You're right, it's the same thing. There's no difference. Dilamai chazye lidmei. If a father dedicates animals that have a balmum, they can't be brought in the mizbeach. What is their value? What is their kedusha? Their kedusha is only for their money, that you have to sell it for the money. So if so, dami haina mois, the fact its value, that's the same as mois. It's the same as dedicating money. So therefore, according to Rav Nachman, the way we distinguish between money and animals is that animals that have a mum do not fall into the category of animals that are already ready for a carbon, but they actually fall into the category of money because they can't be used as a carbon b'chlal. It's ready to be used to redeem, just like money itself, for its value. So therefore, there's no raya from this braisa. Okay, start a new Indian here. Also continuing a little bit in this is Gemara is discussing matters of kachim. A person's wife accepted Naziris upon herself, and she's already all the way at the end. She already brought her karbanis. You have to bring 3 different karbanis, a chatas, eila, and a shlomim. So the blood was already sprayed from one of the karbanis. So the question is, at this point, could the husband nullify his wife's Nazirus? Once the blood of one of the karbanis that you bring at the conclusion of the Nazirus was sprayed in the mizbeach, it's too late. The husband cannot anymore nullify the Nazirus.
You just found out now?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
After the whole thing you found out?
Yeah, but you must say that, because if you found out before, if you found out before, b'yom shama, it has to be only on the day, correct? But it's too late. It's too late. Rabbi Akiva says, even before this rike, if one of the animals that have to be brought for the carbon of Naziris, even after just a shchita, it's already too late. The husband cannot nullify her Naziris. The Gemara will explain the machlokes. Now the Gemara explains, which karbanis are we speaking about here? When you talk about the Nazir, there's always 2 types of karbanis. There's the karbanis that you bring at the conclusion of Naziris, and there's a karbanis that would have to be brought if she got Tomei somewhere in between. You have to bring karbanis and then start over the whole Naziris again. So the Mishnah explains, when do we say that it's too late for the husband to nullify the karbanis and the cutting of the hair that are brought at the end of the Naziris that was pure? If she's bringing her karbanis and cutting her hair because she got tomei in between, and now she's going to have to do the naziris all over again, yafer. So now he for sure it's not too late. He can still nullify the naziris. Why? The husband could say, I can't handle living with a wife that's menuvelas, that's suffering, that she can't drink wine, she can't do this, she can't do that. What? So therefore, this is b'chlal the halacha that a husband could nullify any nedarim that his wife is inu nefesh, that she's suffering from it. So therefore, over here she still has to do her whole naziris over again, so he could still nullify it. A third opinion the Mishnah brings here, Rab Meir Omer, or some take out the word Meir, Rabbi Omer. Even the karbanas that she brings at the end of her naziris, when she was pure, still yofer. Even after she brought those karbanas, it's not too late for the husband to say that I'm nullifying her naziris. Because now the husband could come and say, even after she brought the karbanas, there's still something that's bothering me here. I don't want to have a wife that will not go ahead and cut her hair. When do you cut the hair? After she brings the karbanas, she has to go and shave her hair. So he doesn't want his wife to cut all of her hair. It's dvarim shebeinoy lebeinah. Even this lav dafka. This is something which is that she suffers from it, but it's something that the husband could nullify in nedarim if it's a matter between him and her. So over here, he doesn't want his wife to cut his hair, her hair that is. So therefore, he could still nullify the naziris even after all the karbanos were brought. Zok the Gemara here as an introduction to explain the machlokes of the Tanakama and Rabbi Kiva. First, the Gemara explains our Mishnah for sure does not go according to the following opinion. Masnisin the like Rabbi Eliezer. Our Mishnah is not like Rabbi Eliezer. The Rabbi Eliezer, if it would follow Rabbi Eliezer, Ha'amar Rabbi Eliezer said, Taglachas me'akeves, that even after the karbanos are brought, but she did not yet cut all of her hair, she cannot yet go and do everything like a normal person. In other words, those isurim that apply to a nazir, not to drink wine and so on, still applies. V'kivin de legilcha asira b'chamra. So if she, according to Rabbi Eliezer, if she didn't cut her hair yet, she's still not allowed to drink wine. V'kivin de isla nivel matzi mefer. So since she's still in pain, there's a certain affliction that she can't drink the wine. Why would it be too late for the husband to nullify this neder? The husband could say, look, my wife still can't drink wine, so I have the right to nullify this neder. Our Mishnah is saying that once she brought the karbanis, okay, there's a machlokes exactly what that means, whether the blood was sprayed or there was shechted, but once the karbanis were brought, it's too late. Why is it too late? She still can't drink wine. So therefore our Mishnah does not go according to Rabbi Eliezer. We're following the other opinion that says that once the karbanis are brought, now her naziris is off, she can do whatever she wants, even though she didn't yet shave her hair. So therefore, seemingly it should be too late for the husband, it should be too late for the husband to nullify the naziris. So now what's the machlokes here? Now based on this, what's the machlokes between the Tanakama and Rabbi Kiva? At what point when the karbanos were brought is it too late? When the carbon was shechted or when the blood was sprayed in the mizbeach? So the argument here is as follows. Tana Didon Savar, the Tanakama, the first Tana of the Mishnah holds, Kivin des Darakalet Domla Alta Shari Bechamra. As soon as the blood was spread in the Mizbeach, immediately she's allowed to drink wine, and therefore V'halesla Nivel. So therefore from that point going forward, she's not any more despicable, she's not any more suffering that she can't drink the wine, so it's too late. There's no reason we should allow the husband to nullify the neder of the Naziris. And this is dafka after the Zrika of the Dam. We know by all karbanis, the main kapara of a carbon is the spraying of the blood. So after the spraying of the blood, now she's not a nazir anymore. So why does Rabbi Kiva say? Rabbi Kiva agrees to this, that it's only after the spraying of the blood that she could begin drinking wine. So why does Rabbi Kiva say even after it was shechted, already from that point it's too late for the husband to nullify? Rabbi Kiva says, Afile ishtachitas. Behema, even once the behema was already slaughtered, he can't nullify the neder, and the reason is this is a takanas chachamim. Mishom hefset kachim. Because once the behema was shechted, what's going to happen now? You have this shechted animal, he nullifies the naziris. So now the other avodas that have to be done with this animal, the spraying of the blood, cannot be done anymore for this naziris. The naziris is nullified. So what's going to be with this kachim here? It's going to be the ruin. No one's going to eat it. You can't continue bringing it. So Chachamim made a takana that once the animal is shechted, the husband can't nullify the naziris, even though Menatayra there should be reason he can, because she still can't drink wine until the blood is sprayed. But he can't nullify so that the kachim should be able to be continued and brought the way it's supposed to. On this, the Gemara asks a question, why is this a problem? Even if the husband nullifies the naziris at this point, you could still continue bringing the carbon without a problem. Why? Maskefla Rab Zera asks, Vamai, why do we have to make this takana that he can't nullify the naziris? Lizreik daman shalei lishman. So if he nullified the naziris right in the middle, right after the shechita, so you can spray the blood, not l'shem the naziris, l'shem another carbon, l'shem stama shlomim or whatever it is, and v'yate basa b'achila, and actually you'll be allowed to even eat this meat as well of this carbon. And the Gemara brings the source of this. Miloi Tanya, didn't we learn in a Braisa? Kivsei atzeres. The karbanis that are brought on Shavuos, that have to be brought in Shavuos together with the Shtei Alechem, so you bring the special karbanis. Sheshachtan shalei lishman. It was shechted not for the sake of what it's intended to be. Oy sheshachtan lefnei zmana. You shechted it even before Yom Tov. Or la'achaz zmana. You shechted it after Yom Tov. So obviously, you weren't yaitze the mitzvah that it was intended to be brought for. But nevertheless, you weren't yaitze the mitzvah, but the carbon could be brought in the mizbeach. Hadam yizarek. The blood could be spread in the mizbeach. V'habasa yoichal. You can eat the meat of this carbon. This halacha of this brayso is really based on, this is the first Mishnah in Masechtas Zvachim. The first Mishnah in Masechtas Zvachim says, Karbanis that are shechted shaloi lishma, the owner of the carbon did not fulfill his obligation, but the carbon itself is kosher on the Mizbeach. And the brayso here continues, in Moisa Shabbos, if you brought this carbon shaloi lishma on Shabbos, so then lo yizarik, you shouldn't spray the blood, because you can't eat it on Shabbos. If you can't do anything, you're not allowed to eat it on Shabbos. You don't spray the blood of it on Shabbos either. Ve'im zarak, if you went ahead and sprayed the blood even on Shabbos, hurtza, so then it's accepted. And lahakter emunah la'erev, and then you can go and burn the emunah, not on Shabbos itself. It's not allowed to be done on Shabbos because it's not a carbon for Shabbos. But at night, Matzah Shabbos, you can burn it on the Mizbeach. The point is, you see clearly over here that a carbon could be brought shaloi lishma, and it's accepted. So if so, over here, why can't the husband nullify the neder after shechita? So the continuation of the carbon is not going to be for Naziris, it'll be shaloi lishma, and then you can eat it. So you're not ruining kachim. What's the issue of hefset kachim? And says the Gemara, if the first carbon that was shechted here was either the Ayla or the Shlamim, a Nazir has to bring 3 karbanas, Ayla, Shlamim, and Chatas. So if the first carbon that was brought was either the Ayla or the Shlamim, you're right, there would be no hefset of kachim. What was Rabbi Akiva speaking about in our Mishnah? That's if the Chatas was shechted first. And the Gemara here will bring the source that it's possible to shech the chatas first. But the point here is, by a carbon chatas, the halacha actually is that if you bring it shaloi lishma, not only the owner did not fulfill his obligation, but the whole carbon is puzzle. You can't spray the blood anymore. You can't eat from the meat anymore. So by the chatas, it's a different halacha. Where do you see that you can bring chatas first? Keditnan, as we learned in the Mishnah later in our Masechta, im gilach al achas mishloshton yotza. That if she brings any of these karbanis, any of the 3, chatas, oila, or shlomi, she brings it first, and she cuts her hair, so yatsa, she's already yaitza, she's not going to be a nazir anymore. So you could bring the chatas first. That's what our Mishnah is speaking about, that the chatas was brought first, and therefore there's a concern that if the husband nullifies the neder at that point, he's going to ruin the rest of the carbon.
Isn't the chatas supposed to be brought first?
No.
By the kabbanis that
usually chatas,
and then bring
right,
the kabbanis.
Right. Okay, but over here, is there a say? I have to look in the pasuk that it says in the Torah over there regarding a nazir. I'm not sure what the say in the pasuk is. It seems here from the lashon of the Gemara that it's lav dafka brought first, or maybe it's not l'chatchila supposed to be brought first. But over here, the case is that it was brought first. It seems like I have to look in the lashon of the pasuk to see what's the say there. Okay, well, one more piece over here. It said in the Mishnah another halacha that over here the husband could nullify the neder. When do we say that it's too late for the husband to nullify the neder if it was a taglachas at the end of the Naziris, when she was tired? If she's cutting her hair because she became tameh, yafir, then the husband could still nullify the Naziris because she would have to keep the whole Naziris over again. Now, the last opinion of the Mishnah was Rab Meir Aimer, even if she already brought all her karbanis which are tired at the end of her Naziris, Yafir, the husband still has something that is bothers him, and he could nullify the Naziris. And what is that? Even though at this point his wife could already drink the wine and there's no issue with the karbanis anymore, but she still has to cut her hair. He doesn't want her to have to shave her head, so he wants to nullify the Naziris. So what's the argument here? Tanakam will answer you that this is not something the husband could nullify, because efshe b'pei nachris, even if she has to cut all her hair, she can wear a pei nachris, a sheitel. Yeah. So therefore, it's not something which is disgusting. So she can still look beautiful. So he has no rights to annul this vow anyway. So therefore, it's too late. There's nothing for him to nullify. Rav Meir says b'pei nachris. Wearing a pei nachris, because it gets dirty and it's hard to keep it beautiful like human hair, her human hair. So therefore, he's not. They didn't have the shaitels that we have today, apparently, right? So therefore, the husband says, I don't want my wife to have to wear these kinds of hairs, which are not her hair, and it's hard to deal with, and therefore the husband could still nullify the naziros. That's the machlokes here, whether this is something which is Beinoy lebeinot. He said it's a kind of naziris that the husband could nullify because it's a matter that bothers him. Does it bother him? Does it not bother him? Okay, the next Mishnah, I guess we'll keep it to next Inyan.